I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is Norma Rosenberg, who is a Vistage chair from Manhattan, New York City, the Big Apple, where I grew up. And many interesting things about Norma actually is number one, she's got an executive MBA from Columbia University. She was the first woman consultant at Coopers and Lybrand, which is now PwC. So huge, enormous firm and an enormous achievement. But she is also a Vistage chair for now 25 years, which in itself is a tremendous achievement. Thank you so much for joining me, Norma.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
So what if we can go back to and before we started the actual recording, you were telling me all kinds of interesting things, which we'll get to. But what led you to Vistage in the 90s to become a chair? And I think it wasn't even called Vistage at that point, if I'm not
No, it
mistaken.
was called CHEC, the executive committee. Yeah. Well, I had been in two places before Vistage. One was the public sector, and the most interesting area that I was in the public sector was the National Archives. I know what a fabulous organization that is and how straight up the people are, because I worked with them for 6 years and I went all over, even including I had the UN Secretariat as a client, all kinds of public sector at every level. And it was fascinating. I mean, the subject was records and information management, but I got to meet all these interesting people at the UN Secretariat. I went to some secretariat meetings, and we had it. The thing about it is everything moves so slowly, and I learned that, while I was working with them. You could work on a project for a year and still not have the results. But I loved the people that I met.
And so what brings you from there to peer groups? What made what was your first sort of peer group experience that made you want to be part of this, and for such a long time?
Well, I knew Jeanette Hobson from the Columbia University, the business school's executive MBA program. We were just a half a year apart in our classes. And Jeanette is legendary in our Vistage world. And she had become a chair some years before me, and she formed my first group. She didn't know at the time that I was going to be the leader of it, but I was asked to lead it when she had put it together. So you know, I mean, new chairs really, the first year is the hardest when they're trying to build a group. And I got handed a group by Jeanette. So I felt like the luckiest person
It's
having that
tremendously
kind of
lucky, and
introduction.
you're
And she gave me a group with 10 members already. And
that's
I had gone through chair
fantastic.
training and I had experience. Yeah.
What and you've been with Tech, now Vistage, for 25 years. That is, and I mean that's an enormous amount of time to do anything. What's the thing that's been most meaningful to you that makes you stay? How do you stay in love with this work?
Yeah, I did it. I still love it 25 years later. I still love it. And I believe that that's contributed to my longevity and good health. I love it because I'm still having one-to-ones with people that we go very deep, and they'll say anything. And I, I give a talk about what I've learned to do, which is how to hear what they're not saying. So if you think about that, that means that I'm
Hmm.
really listening deeply, and I'm focusing on what feelings I get inside. I don't take notes anymore. I just listen. And somewhere about halfway through an hour's one-to-one, I can intuit, I know something about them that they haven't said. So I give a talk about it at the Chair World. The conference is how to hear what they're not saying. That's what I have learned to do.
How is your, I mean, and I'm sure that the way that you approach things, and you've just given us one example, but I'm sure that there are a lot of ways that your approach has evolved.
Sure. Well, in the beginning, I went to all the courses and all the trainings that they gave us, and I followed the rules, and now I don't have to. Um, Susan Scott was one of my early teachers, and she taught me how to listen deeply and feel things that the person, is not saying. And I have been doing that all 25 years. And I've gotten even better at it. I don't have to follow the agenda. If a lot of people have issues or opportunities at a meeting, we make space for that. We do, in the beginning of the meeting, it's, well, what have you got? What have you got? Where are you at?
Right.
And we put the issues and the opportunities on the table, and we go to work.
When uh, when we were chit-chatting beforehand, you told me two really interesting things that you had done that were firsts for Vistage. The first one was about nonprofit groups, and the second one was about being the first group to start in Harlem. I would love to hear those stories.
That's right. And really, if you think both of those are under the under the umbrella of diversity,
Right.
because when I became a chair, most of the Vistage members were white men. And I understood from my previous work that anybody that is intelligent and has clear goals could be part of this. So it just, I was first, Diane Drury and I worked to have a group in Harlem. And they opened up the biggest hall in Harlem to invite like 100 people. I had the head of the New York Urban League in Harlem in my group. He was a member. So he introduced me to the head of the Harlem Chamber of Commerce and some other, well-known people. And everybody came to this event. I can't remember what the space was called, but it was enormous and it had a terrace. And Darwin Davis, from the Urban League, introduced me and Diane, and we got a whole group out of that. So it wasn't, boilerplate diversity, but it was a start having that group in Harlem and then connecting with people that we invited to be in our other Vistage groups.
I mean, it's just a great story because um, eh, Harlem, for those that are not New Yorkers, Harlem has a legacy of being a one of the few predominantly black neighborhoods in I mean large neighborhood in Manhattan. And so right at the top of Manhattan, you had this whole section of real estate that was predominantly um, black, and then we're Spanish Harlem too,
Hmm.
and it was it was an area that at the time, I would say until Bill Clinton decided that he was going to put his office there after the presidency, that that mainstream culture in New York tried to stay away
Yes.
from. And it was one of those things, well, why is that? And when I was growing up, I never got good answers, but for you to go in and say, hey, we're going to support business leadership here, I think that's amazing given the time and place.
The other thing about Harlem that is so interesting about the business people there is you're likely to meet someone that doesn't just have one business, they'll have three. And so together they might have, 4 million in revenue. So it's different than the Vistage model. And I had to spend a lot of time with the Vistage leaders at the time. helping them understand how different this was and that it didn't fit the normal parameters. And I fought, Diane and I fought so hard for that they weren't thrilled about it because it didn't fit any of the models at the time, but we got them to just, close their eyes and let us go ahead. So we had the experience.
I think it's amazing. I give you just, I really applaud that,
I'm very
especially
proud.
as a
Thank you.
New York City kid. And tell me about your nonprofit group that you started, which was also a first.
Sure. So I knew from my work at the National Archives and in other parts of the public sector that there were other communities besides uh, companies, traditional companies. There were other communities that were very serious and that made money, or at least balanced the books, and that those people from the public and the not-for-profit worlds could mesh with the business people, and that there probably would be a very good benefit from mixing the two, that each side would learn things from the other. And that's what I did. I mixed in my group. I had the businessmen, and I invited some non-traditional business women who had on very unusual businesses. And I invited not-for-profit leaders to be in the group. And what I wanted to happen, what I expected, was that they rubbed off on each other. And they were able to help each other. They were all smart people. It's just more for diversity. It sounded unlikely, but it worked great.
And so today you're running a key executive group, which for you you've got not only
Yeah.
the key executives, but you've also got business leaders, CEOs. I would love to hear about the group that you're running today.
So it's again not traditional. I put people in it that are smaller companies, larger companies. I am more concerned about the person fitting in than the company. And when people are diverse in their thinking, they realize that other people not like themselves in the group can help them in a different way. The not-for-profits tend to be more people-oriented, and they've got some neat stories about, saving people, especially during the pandemic, that the for-profits have learned from.
I'm
Um,
sure.
that there are ways to keep working with people who are different. And the for-profits rub off on the not-for-profits. The not-for-profits realize that they have to make this successful in tangible ways, not just do good. You know what I mean? There has to be, they have to sort of balance the book. Yeah, it's serious work, and the finances have to add up
They've got the same challenges. Their
for
priorities are
success.
different, perhaps, but they've got the same challenges, and there's definitely a
Yes.
lot to learn from each other.
Yeah.
I think it's cool when for-profits see what it's like to truly have a mission-driven organization, which is a lot more common in the nonprofit area than in the for-profit. And it's like, oh, we talk about that, but that's what this actually looks like. So I agree with you. I think that's really, really neat. Um, what's something that you have, looking at your 25 years in Vistage, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you have taken that you would have really loved to have known when you were younger?
The biggest lesson is to listen deeply and not talk much. I mean, in the beginning, a lot of the chair training is around, here's a list of questions that you should ask people, and here's this technique and that process and something else. And I found that if I just am quiet, and they know how well I listen, I can pick up things that they are not saying. And that's the biggest lesson, is not to worry about the list of questions, not to be thinking about what I should ask next. Because if they know I care about them, and I can just say something like, yeah, it seems like something's a little off today. Do you know what it is? Like that. I'll just pick up a feeling or something that is different, and I'll ask about it. And just by asking about it, we get to a core thing, what's on their heart, their minds today.
I think that's terrific. One last question. If you were sitting across the table from somebody who was running a business, who was feeling that isolation, who hadn't had a peer group experience of any point, of any kind at this point, what would you tell them about Vistage, and what would you encourage
Uh,
them to do?
you have no idea how good this question is for me. I don't talk about Vistage in the first meeting. I meet somebody at a networking association or wherever it is, and I say, listen, let's get together. Let me give you a one-to-one, and we'll see what happens. I don't talk about Vistage. I ask them, listen, I'm a coach for, decades, several decades. Let's talk about something important. Let me give you a gift today, like that. And I mean it. And about half of the time, there's follow-up and interest. We can talk about
Absolutely.
Vistage later. I don't get people from talking about Vistage. I mean, of course I will eventually, but they have people at Vistage that do that. They do a much better job than I do.
Very cool. I like that, and that is absolutely a terrific lesson to close up with. I absolutely love that. So thank you
Yeah.
for being my guest. I really appreciate you joining me. Thank you for taking 20 minutes of your time to talk to me. Really meaningful, and I wish you the utmost success for. Are we going to do 25 more years in Vistage, or
Oh, maybe. Yeah,
I like
anything's
it.
possible.
Let's do it.
Anything's possible. Thank you, Eric. I love doing this.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.